What's up, y'all? Back again with another video from my beginner chess series here. This is video number 2. This one's going to be about attacking pieces, capturing pieces, checking the king, and hopefully eventually checkmating the king, which is how you win a game of chess if you're unfamiliar. Cool. So let's talk about some attacking moves. So the first move of the chess game, you're not going to be able to attack any pieces. Nothing's close enough to be attacked, and your long-range pieces are all trapped behind this wall of pawns. So the most common first move in the game of chess is e4. So pawn to e4. So I'm jumping my pawn into the middle of the board. The squares that I would be attacking are these two, right? Pawns can capture diagonally, one square away from them, and there's nothing on these squares. Well, if black were to play this move, black would be attacking my pawn, but it's also moving into the square that my pawn is attacking, and it's going to be my move. So I am now attacking this piece, and this pawn is capable of capturing this piece. So jump in there, I have now captured a pawn, right? So that idea of sight and the opponent's piece being in this pawn's vision and a place that it can capture it is very important. And so in that circumstance, I can capture it. So now my pawn is just kind of hanging out in the middle of the board. It's black's move, so black could move this pawn and attack my pawn again. The difference here is that this pawn will be protecting this pawn. So the concept of protection is also pretty important. So this is an interesting move. It allows me to capture the pawn, but if I capture the pawn, black could capture back, which you'll see kind of a lot of, and this is a concept of a trade in chess. So I would be up 1 point of material so far because I won that pawn. And then if I were to capture this pawn, I would be up 2 points in material because pawns are both are each worth 1 point material. If black were to take back, I would now be up by 1 point in material because black earned a point of material back. So I have 2 pawns, black has 1, so I am up 1 point in material. Okay. So that is kind of the concept of attacking with pawns, capturing with pawns. Let's get into some other pieces here. So my bishop now has this diagonal open to it, right? So if my bishop goes here, it can then see this pawn, and it's not in the range of the pawn to be captured. So I'm attacking this pawn with no danger from this pawn to my bishop. So if I move my bishop out here, I'm attacking this pawn. This pawn's probably going to have to do something about that. It is protected by this bishop, you might notice. So maybe it doesn't have to do anything about that. If I were to take this pawn, why don't I do that? I'll take this pawn. Then the bishop could then capture my bishop. So that was the third pawn that I've captured. So now I'm up 3-1, but the problem is that piece had something defending it, and my bishop is worth more than the pawn. So this would have been a bad trade. If my bishop gets taken right after I took a pawn, I won 1 point in material, and then I lose 3 points of material, and nothing was protecting my bishop. So the concept of protection and attacking pieces that are worth more, you have to make sure you're winning exchanges in these types of circumstances. All right, so those are some really important concepts of attacking, what pieces can see, protecting pieces, and so on. So let's talk about one very specific and important type of attack here, which is the check. So the check is when you attack the king. So right now, white's to move. The queen has this open diagonal. If I move my queen to this square, I am checking the king. And if the king's in check, that check has to be dealt with. If the king is under attack, you have to relieve that pressure. So there are 3 things the king can do to avoid a check. The king can move, which seems like probably the most obvious one. So this king could move to either of these 2 squares, and it would no longer be being attacked by my queen. You could also block, and there's only one piece that could block in this circumstance, and that's this pawn. That's the only piece that can get onto this diagonal currently to block the attack of my queen. Or you could take the piece that is attacking the king. And my queen is not being attacked by any pieces, so that's not possible. Probably the best move in this circumstance would be to block with the pawn, because the pawn, when the pawn moves here, it's protected by this other pawn, and it's attacking my queen. So my queen's going to have to move. If my queen takes the pawn, it's going to get taken by a pawn, and that's not a good trade. You don't want to trade a queen for a pawn. That's 9-1, and you're going to be losing 8 points of material. So my queen could move, and it could check the king again, which is interesting, but sort of similar circumstance where the pawn can block and kick me away. The bishop could also move here and block me. So let's move here. So this is another check. This bishop can move safely to here, cutting off the check, and also attacking my queen again. And this bishop is protected by a knight, a queen, and a king. So that's very safe. So let's say I moved here. I could continue checking the king. I could move to here or here, but I'm definitely going to want to move because my queen is under attack. So let's say that I moved right here. Okay, so that's check again. The queen could block. Interesting. Interesting move, because then we have two equal value pieces staring at each other. And if I take, then it's protected, so we would trade off the queen. So let's say that happened. So the queen blocks here, so there's no more check. Then I take here. The king is checked. It can either take or the bishop can take. It's not going to be able to move out of check because both of these squares are still taken by my queen. So let's say the queens get traded here. Cool. And now, so those are a bunch of checks, a bunch of examples of checks. Now let's try to check out what a checkmate is all about. So a checkmate happens when you are in check, but you can't move out of check, and there's nothing you can do. You can't block it, you can't take the piece that's attacking you, and you also can't move away from the check. So let's put ourselves in a circumstance where that might happen. It would probably be easier with the queens on the board. So let's get a new setup here. Let's take a look at this situation. So the black king is on the back rank. It's on the 8th rank here, and the rook is not checking the king, but it's taking away all of these squares. So the king can't move forward at all. If my queen moves to here, the king is in check, and this is checkmate, because the king can't move forward into check of the rook, and the queen is checking the king and taking away all of these squares. So the king can't jump to any of these, so all of these are being taken, and that's an example of checkmate. Let's set up one more board and see another example of a checkmate. All right, let's take a look at this sort of ridiculous position that probably would never happen, but there is a king on the board for black, and right now it has nowhere to move, right? Its pieces are blocking it in. And my knight right here is on the side of the board and can jump to right here, and this is checking the king and actually checkmating the king because its pieces are completely blocking it in. And this is something called a smother mate. So there's two basic types of checkmates that you can see. A lot of times you'll use two major pieces to sort of cut off a lot of the squares that the king can go to, and then checkmate the king that way. Or sometimes the king has a bunch of its own pieces that are taking away its squares for movement, and a piece can kind of sneak in and trap it in that way. But there are a lot of different types of ways to find checkmates. Some of them are much easier to see than others, but there's a couple of them for you. Cool. So that's about it for this video, I think. So that covered attacks, captures, protecting pieces, checking, and checkmating the king. And those are some major concepts. Be back with another beginner video soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Catch you later.